So, what is the significance of this key? Well, it's being presented with the third coin in this series. But to understand why, you need to watch the video. If you understand history at all, you'll know that the French played a pivotal role in the foundation of the United States. One of the most supportive members in the Revolutionary War was a man by the name of Gilbert de Motier. And this name might not ring a bell to you, but I'm certain that you've heard the second name he went by, which was the Marquis de Lafayette. See, him and a famous general, a man you know by the name of George Washington, had a special relationship. This friendship, or bond between the two men, grew so strong that it became more like a father and son relationship rather than a commander and a superior officer. See, the two men shared a type of bond that only some military friends will understand. For this reason, George Washington would receive a rather unsuspecting gift from Lafayette. And Lafayette knew there was no better person to receive this symbol to end the ancient tyranny than the man who fought so bravely to establish the United States. Did you miss it? Well, maybe. Stay tuned and I'll get to what the ancient tyranny was in just a moment. So let's talk about this Lafayette guy. At first glance, he might not seem like the likeliest of supporters. After all, he inherited one of France's largest fortunes when his mother died, and he married a woman from a very renowned family. But Lafayette wasn't about money. He was more about honor and glory. See, in 1775, Lafayette attended a dinner with a man by the name of the Duke of Gloucester, and he was complaining about the American colonists, how they had risen up against British rule. He mocked the revolutionary beliefs and the equality of mankind, scoffing at the right of people to rule themselves. The Duke explained to Lafayette that the colonists had organized a continental army, a treasonous relationship with General George Washington. Lafayette later would write that this lit a fire underneath him, and that in his words, "I thought only of joining my colors to that of the revolutionaries." However, King Louis XIV later ordered Lafayette to remain in France. But Lafayette was defiant. Being a nobleman, he said, "I will set sail for America," and did so in early 1777. When he finally arrived in Philadelphia, he met James Lovell. Now, James Lovell was a congressman from Massachusetts, and he refused to allow him to step off ship, saying that Americans were sick and tired of Frenchmen coming to the U.S. to seek glory. But in typical fashion, the political man stepped up when he realized the wealth and well-connected nature of Lafayette. Lovell later would recommend Lafayette as an appointment as Major General. Ever heard of something called Brandywine Creek? Well, many of you would think of the Lord of the Rings and the Shire, but in fact, it's actually where George Washington was when Lafayette arrived in 1777. Here's where the Continental Army was getting ready to fight General William Howe. The capital was in danger, and Washington needed Lafayette to join General Sullivan. The enemy surrounded them. Sullivan resigned to retreat, and Lafayette, despite his unhappy nature with the choice, obeyed the order, realizing in the commotion he had actually been shot. And this is where the relationship of Lafayette and Washington shone through. See, Lafayette received Washington's own private surgeon to care for him, and he was given the words from Washington, "Treat him as if he were my son." In June of 78, Lafayette went back to France, hoping to win more support for the United States. And he was treated as a hero, but he wouldn't receive the commission to lead the armies as one would expect. So a year later, Lafayette returned to the U.S. Cornwallis would be there, they would have their battle, and a very elated Lafayette would accept Cornwallis's surrender. This is where the key in the video would come into play. See, back in France, Lafayette helped launch the French Revolution of 1789. He served his National Assembly and drafted the Declaration of the Rights of Man. If you haven't ever read it, you need to. He proudly sent this key, which is the key to the Bastille, to George Washington. Now, by this time, George Washington was serving as the President of the United States. And this was a sign that Lafayette understood the tyranny the U.S. had worked so hard to free itself from. One of Lafayette's greatest joys came in 1828 when he was able to go back to the United States to visit the grave of George Washington. And with tears in his eyes, Lafayette stated he would remain a defender of the U.S. Republic's ideals until he died in 1834. Clearly, designers of this coin recognized the great love for the nation, sacrifices that were made by Lafayette. The goal, freedom for the United States of America. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and the amazing story and the history of the men and the relationships that forged a nation. Consider subscribing to the channel. Comment down below. Hit that bell, smash that like, because the next coin in this series will be the first gold in the set, in the Louisiana Purchase coin. So stay tuned. See you next week for another amazing video on these commemorative half series. Be well, be blessed, and I will see you in the streams. Take care.